The morning sun barely peeked through the thin curtains of the small apartment where Lisa lived with her mother. It was another Saturday, which meant another day of work at the grocery store down the street. While other girls her age were probably still asleep, dreaming about weekend plans and shopping trips, Lisa was already tying her worn sneakers and pulling her hair back into a simple ponytail. She glanced at the corner of their living room where an old keyboard sat on a wobbly stand. There wasn't much to look at. 3 of the keys didn't work anymore, and the sound was tinny compared to a real piano. But it was hers, and she loved it more than anything else she owned. Her fingers itched to play for just a few minutes before work, but she knew her mother was still sleeping in the next room after working the night shift at the hotel. Lisa grabbed her backpack and quietly slipped out the door. The grocery store was only a 10-minute walk, and she actually didn't mind the job. Sure, her hands got rough from handling boxes and her feet hurt by the end of each shift, but it meant she could help with the rent. It meant her mother didn't have to work quite so many double shifts. And sometimes when the store was empty and Mr. Peterson wasn't looking, she could hum melodies in her head while she stocked the shelves. The day dragged on like it always did, scanning items, bagging groceries, smiling at customers who barely looked at her. Some people were kind and said thank you. Others treated her like she was invisible, like she was just part of the machine that checked out their food. Lisa had gotten used to it. She had gotten used to a lot of things. By 3 in the afternoon, her shift finally ended. She walked out into the bright sunshine and pulled out her phone to check the message from her mother. "Can you meet me at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel? I need to give you the house keys. Mine broke this morning." Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. The Grand Metropolitan Hotel. She had walked past it 100 times but never gone inside. It was one of those places that seemed to exist in a different universe. The kind of place where doormen wore white gloves and the floors were so shiny you could see your reflection. Her mother had worked there as a housekeeper for 3 years now, but Lisa had never actually visited her at work. She caught the bus and got off 2 stops later. Standing in front of the massive building with its glass doors and golden decorations, for a moment she hesitated. Maybe she should wait outside. Maybe she should call her mother to come out. But it was getting hot, and she could see comfortable chairs through the glass. Besides, she wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just picking up keys from her mother. Lisa pushed through the door and stepped into another world. The lobby was enormous. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls of light. The floor was white marble, so perfectly clean it gleamed. Tall pillars rose up to the high ceiling, and everything smelled expensive, like fresh flowers and fancy perfume mixed together. Lisa felt suddenly very aware of her faded jeans and the small stain on her grocery store shirt that she couldn't quite get out in the wash. She texted her mother to let her know she had arrived, then looked around for a place to wait that wouldn't draw attention. That's when she saw it. Right in the center of the lobby, positioned under the largest chandelier, sat the most beautiful piano she had ever seen. It was a grand piano, glossy and black, its surface so perfectly polished that it reflected the lights above like a mirror. The lid was propped open, revealing the strings inside, and the bench in front of it had velvet cushioning. Lisa found herself walking toward it without even deciding to move. It was like the piano was pulling her across the marble floor. She had seen grand pianos before, of course, in videos online and in movies, but she had never been this close to one, never been close enough to see the fine details of the wood, or the way the keys seemed to glow white and black in perfect contrast. She stood there, just staring, her fingers twitching at her sides. What would it sound like? A real piano, not her little broken keyboard. What would it feel like under her fingers? The keys would be heavier, she knew that much. They would require real pressure, real technique. Everything she had taught herself on her cheap keyboard would translate differently on an instrument like this. Almost without thinking, Lisa reached out her hand. Her finger was an inch away from touching one of the white keys when she heard the laughter. A group of teenagers had entered the lobby through the main entrance. There were 5 of them, and they were impossible not to notice. The girls wore designer dresses that probably cost more than Lisa's entire wardrobe. The boys had on pressed shirts and expensive watches that caught the light. They carried themselves with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about anything, never having to count change before buying lunch, never having to choose between new shoes and helping with the electric bill. One of the girls, tall with perfectly straight blonde hair, noticed Lisa standing by the piano. She whispered something to her friends, and they all turned to look. Then they started walking over, and Lisa felt her stomach tighten. "We're here for the chamber music reception," one of the boys was saying loudly. "It doesn't start for another hour, but Mother insisted we arrive early." The blonde girl was staring at Lisa now, a small smile playing at her lips. Not a friendly smile. Lisa recognized that look. She had seen it before at school, in stores, on the faces of people who had decided you were less than them before you even opened your mouth. "Look," the girl said to her friends, just loud enough for Lisa to hear. "We have an admirer of the piano." Her friends giggled. Lisa felt her face getting hot. She should leave. She should just walk away and wait for her mother somewhere else. But her hand was still extended toward the keys, frozen in place. "I'm sorry," Lisa said quietly, starting to pull her hand back. "I was just what?" The blonde girl interrupted, stepping closer. Her perfume was overwhelming, sweet and flowery. "Just about to touch a piano that costs more than a car? Do you even know what this is?" Lisa did know. She knew it was a Steinway. She could see the name written in gold letters above the keys. She knew this was the kind of instrument that concert pianists dreamed of playing. She knew more about pianos than this girl probably ever would, but she didn't say any of that. One of the other girls pulled out her phone. "This is going to be so funny," she whispered to her friend. Lisa felt like she was shrinking, like she was becoming smaller and smaller under their stares. She glanced toward the hallway where her mother would eventually appear, but there was no sign of her yet. The hotel manager had noticed the commotion and was walking toward them, his face stern. This was it. She was going to be asked to leave, to get away from the piano, away from these people, back to where she belonged. Lisa's hand dropped to her side, but as it did, her finger brushed against one of the keys. A single, pure note rang out in the lobby. Clear and perfect and beautiful. And in that moment, something changed inside Lisa. That one note awakened every hour she had spent practicing. Every sacrifice her mother had made. Every dream she had kept quiet because she was afraid people would laugh at her for having it. The fear didn't disappear, but underneath it, something stronger was rising up. She looked at the piano, then at the manager approaching, then at the group of teenagers with their mocking smiles and recording phones, and she made a decision that would change everything. The blonde girl crossed her arms and tilted her head, looking at Lisa like she was some kind of curious specimen in a museum. Her friends had formed a small semicircle behind her, all of them watching with barely concealed amusement. The phone cameras were still pointed at Lisa, ready to capture whatever embarrassing moment was about to unfold. "Did you just touch that piano?" the blonde girl asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Honey, I don't think you understand. This isn't some toy you can just play with. This is a Steinway grand piano. Do you have any idea what that means?" Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but one of the boys cut her off with a laugh. "Of course she doesn't know what it means. Look at her. She probably thought it was just a fancy decoration." The words stung, but what hurt more was the way they were all looking at her, like she was something beneath them. Like her worn clothes and tired eyes meant she couldn't possibly understand beauty or music or anything that mattered to them. Lisa had dealt with judgment before, but something about this moment felt different. Maybe it was because she was standing so close to something she loved. Maybe it was because that single note still seemed to hang in the air around them. The hotel manager had reached them now, and he looked uncomfortable. His eyes moved from Lisa's grocery store uniform to the expensively dressed teenagers, clearly trying to figure out what was happening. Lisa could see the calculation in his face. These kids were probably guests or children of guests. Important people. She was just the daughter of a housekeeper. "Is there a problem here?" the manager asked, his voice professionally neutral. "No problem at all," the blonde girl said sweetly. "We were just explaining to this girl that the piano is very valuable. I'm sure she didn't mean any harm. She probably just doesn't know better." The condescension in her voice was thick enough to cut. Her friends nodded along, and Lisa felt her cheeks burning. She should just apologize and walk away. That would be the smart thing to do. The safe thing. But her eyes kept drifting back to the piano, and her fingers wouldn't stop tingling. "I do know better," Lisa said quietly, surprising herself. "I know exactly what this piano is." The blonde girl raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? And what would you know about it? Did you read about it on the internet?" "Actually, yes," Lisa said, her voice steady now. "I've read everything I could find about pianos. I know this is a Model D Steinway. Probably worth around $200,000. I know it has over 12,000 parts and takes almost a year to build. I know the hammers are made from wool felt and have to be voiced perfectly to get the right tone. There was a moment of silence. The blonde girl's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. Well, look at that. She knows how to use Google. But knowing about a piano and actually playing one are two completely different things. I've been taking lessons since I was 4 years old. I practice 2 hours every single day. My teacher studied at Juilliard. One of her friends chimed in. Catherine is amazing. She's won 3 regional competitions. She's probably going to get into a conservatory. Catherine. So that was the blonde girl's name. Lisa watched as Catherine stepped closer to the piano, running her hand along its polished surface with the casual ownership of someone who had grown up around beautiful things. The thing is, Catherine continued, playing piano isn't just about reading some facts online. It takes years of proper training. Real lessons from real teachers. Not everyone can do it, and that's okay. We all have our place in the world. The implication was clear. Catherine's place was here in this beautiful hotel, playing this beautiful piano. Lisa's place was somewhere else. Anywhere else. Another girl in the group, shorter with dark hair pulled back in an elaborate braid, spoke up. It's actually kind of sad, isn't it? She probably heard about the reception tonight and came to see real musicians. Maybe she dreams about playing but knows she'll never be able to afford lessons. They were talking about Lisa like she wasn't even there, like she was a character in some story they were telling themselves. The hotel manager shifted uncomfortably, and Lisa could see him preparing to ask her to leave, to move away from the piano and stop causing a scene. But then something unexpected happened. May I play it? Lisa asked, her voice cutting through their conversation. Everyone stopped talking. Catherine actually laughed out loud, a sharp sound that echoed off the marble floors. You want to play? This piano? Yes, Lisa said simply. Oh, this is perfect, one of the boys said, pulling his phone up higher to get a better angle. This is absolutely going on social media. My followers are going to love this. Catherine looked at Lisa with something between pity and amusement. You know what? Sure, why not? It'll be a good lesson for you. Playing a real piano isn't like whatever little keyboard you might have at home. It takes real skill, real training. But go ahead, show us what you've got. The manager looked uncertain. I don't know if that's such a good idea. This piano is very expensive, and we have a tuner coming next week to prepare it for... Oh, come on, Catherine interrupted. What's she going to do, break it? Let her try. I think we could all use a good laugh. Besides, maybe it'll inspire her to take some actual lessons someday. Lisa could feel her heart pounding so hard it seemed to shake her entire body. This was a terrible idea. She had never played a real grand piano before. Everything she knew came from teaching herself, from watching videos online, from that broken keyboard in her living room. What if she sat down and couldn't make her fingers work? What if the keys felt so different that she fumbled and proved them all right? But then she thought about all those nights after work, practicing until her fingers ached, all those hours spent listening to recordings, trying to understand not just the notes but the feeling behind them. All those times her mother had come home exhausted and still stopped to listen to her play, pride shining in her tired eyes. Please, Lisa said, looking at the manager. Just one song. I promise I'll be careful. The manager sighed, looking around the lobby. A few other hotel guests had noticed the commotion and were watching now. He probably wanted this situation resolved quickly and quietly. All right, one song, but be very gentle with the keys. Catherine stepped back with a theatrical gesture, sweeping her arm toward the piano bench like she was presenting a stage. By all means. The floor's yours. Her friends were all grinning now, phones at the ready. They were expecting a disaster. They were expecting to capture the moment when this girl in her grocery store uniform sat down at a professional piano and embarrassed herself. They were already planning how to caption the video, what hashtags to use, how many likes they would get. Lisa walked to the piano bench and sat down slowly. The velvet cushion was soft, much nicer than the hard stool she used at home. She looked at the keys, all 88 of them stretching out before her in perfect black and white patterns. They were pristine, unmarked by years of use. They seemed to glow under the chandelier light. She could hear Catherine whispering to her friends behind her. This is going to be so cringeworthy. I almost feel bad. Almost. The lobby had gotten quieter. More people had stopped what they were doing to watch. Lisa could feel dozens of eyes on her back. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling the cool, smooth ivory under her fingertips. They felt different from her keyboard. Heavier. More real. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. And then, Lisa began to play. The first notes that came from the piano were soft, almost hesitant. Lisa's fingers found the opening melody of Clair de Lune, one of the most beautiful pieces ever written. She had practiced it hundreds of times on her broken keyboard, imagining what it would sound like on a real piano. Now she was about to find out. Behind her, she heard someone stifle a laugh, probably expecting her to crash and burn within the first few measures. But Lisa wasn't thinking about them anymore. The moment her fingers touched those keys and heard the pure, rich sound that came out, everything else faded away. The piano responded to her touch like it had been waiting for her. Each key had weight and resistance, so different from her cheap keyboard at home. But instead of throwing her off, it felt right. It felt like finally speaking in her native language after years of using broken sentences. The opening phrases flowed out, gentle and dreaming, just like moonlight on water. Lisa's foot found the pedal naturally, using it to blend the notes together in that special way that makes the piano sound like it's singing. Her hands moved across the keys, the muscle memory from all those hours of practice taking over. She could feel the difference in every single note. On her keyboard at home, everything sounded tinny and flat. But this piano had depth. It had color. When she played softly, the notes were like whispers. When she pressed harder, they swelled with emotion. It was like the difference between seeing a photograph of the ocean and actually standing in front of it. The melody began to build, and Lisa's fingers moved faster, more confidently. She had worried that the heavier keys would slow her down, but instead they made her play with more control, more precision. Every note was exactly where it needed to be. The runs that always sounded muddy on her keyboard now sparkled with clarity. Behind her, the laughter had stopped. Lisa didn't notice. She was lost in the music now, her body swaying slightly with the phrases. Her mother had once told her that she looked different when she played, like she became someone else. Someone free. Lisa had never understood what that meant until this moment. The piece moved into its more complex section, where the left hand plays a rolling pattern while the right hand carries the melody above it. This was the part that had taken her months to get right, practicing the hands separately over and over until they could finally work together. On her keyboard, 3 of the keys in this section didn't work, so she'd had to imagine what those notes sounded like. Now she didn't have to imagine. The music filled the entire lobby. It bounced off the marble floors and high ceilings, surrounding everyone with its beauty. People who had been walking through stopped in their tracks. A couple who had been checking in at the front desk turned around. The bellhop who was carrying luggage set it down gently and just listened. Lisa's hands moved through the challenging passages like water flowing downhill, natural and inevitable. This was the part where Catherine had expected her to mess up, to hit wrong notes and prove that she didn't belong. But Lisa's fingers knew this music. They had lived with it for so long that it was part of her now. The melody reached its emotional peak, the part that always made Lisa feel like her heart was too big for her chest. She leaned into it, letting the piano sing out with all the longing and beauty the composer had put into those notes. Her eyes were still closed, but tears were forming behind her eyelids, not from sadness, from the overwhelming feeling of finally being able to play this music the way it deserved to be played. Behind her, Catherine's smile had completely disappeared. Her phone was still recording, but her hand had lowered slightly. She was staring at Lisa's back with an expression that was hard to read. Confusion, maybe, or disbelief. Her friends had gone quiet too, watching with wide eyes as this girl in a grocery store uniform played with a skill that none of them had expected. The hotel manager had stopped worrying about the piano. He stood perfectly still, his professional demeanor cracking as he listened. He had heard many people play this piano over the years. Hotel guests showing off, local musicians practicing for events, even a few professionals. But there was something different about this performance. Something raw and honest that made the familiar piece sound new. An elderly man in an expensive suit had emerged from the elevator. He had been planning to walk straight through the lobby to his car, but the music stopped him. He stood there, one hand on his cane, his weathered face softening as he listened. He knew this piece well. He had heard it performed in concert halls around the world, but this young girl was playing it with a kind of pure emotion that he hadn't heard in years. Lisa moved into the final section, where the melody becomes simpler again, returning to the dreaming quality of the beginning. Her fingers were tired. She had been working at the grocery store all morning and her hands ached, but she pushed through. This was the part where you had to make the notes get softer and softer, fading away like moonlight disappearing at dawn. She played the last gentle phrases, each note carefully placed, each one dissolving into silence. The final chord hung in the air, sustained by the pedal, slowly fading until it was gone completely. Lisa sat perfectly still for a moment, her hands still resting on the keys. She was almost afraid to open her eyes, to come back to reality and face whatever was waiting for her. In this moment, with the last note still echoing in her memory, she could pretend that everything had gone perfectly. That maybe, just maybe, she hadn't embarrassed herself. Then she heard it. Someone started clapping. Lisa opened her eyes and turned around slowly. The elderly man with the cane was applauding, his face showing genuine appreciation. Then the couple from the front desk joined in. Then the bellhop. Then other people scattered around the lobby who had stopped to listen. The sound of applause filled the space where the music had been just moments before. Catherine was standing completely frozen, her mouth slightly open. She wasn't clapping. Neither were her friends. They just stood there, phones still in their hands, looking like someone had just told them the sky was actually green. The hotel manager was clapping too, and there was something in his eyes that looked almost like an apology, like he was sorry for assuming she couldn't play, for being ready to ask her to leave. More people were gathering now, drawn by the applause. They didn't know what had happened, but they could sense that something special had occurred. A businessman loosened his tie and clapped. A mother with a young daughter smiled and applauded. Even the staff members who had peeked out from behind the front desk were showing their appreciation. Lisa stood up from the piano bench, her legs shaky. She couldn't believe this was happening. She had expected laughter, mockery, maybe even being escorted out of the hotel. Instead, people were clapping for her music. Catherine finally found her voice, though it came out smaller than before. How did you learn to play like that? Lisa turned to look at her. The mocking expression was gone from Catherine's face, replaced by something that might have been respect, or maybe just confusion. Her friends were whispering to each other, rewatching the video they had just recorded with very different expressions than they'd had a few minutes ago. Before Lisa could answer, the elderly man with the cane walked toward her, moving slowly but with purpose. Everyone stepped aside to let him through. There was something about the way he carried himself that made it clear he was someone important. He stopped in front of Lisa and looked at her carefully, studying her face like he was trying to memorize it. "Young lady," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent that Lisa couldn't quite place. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Lisa looked at the elderly man, unsure how to respond. His eyes were kind but intense, like he could see right through to her soul. She shook her head slightly, still trying to process what had just happened. "I just played a song," she said quietly. "That's all." The man smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "No, my dear, you didn't just play a song. You made that piano sing. You made it tell a story. In my 40 years as a musician, I have heard Claire de Lune performed perhaps 1,000 times. But the way you just played it?" He paused, shaking his head in wonder. "That was something special." Lisa felt her cheeks flush. "Thank you, sir. That's very kind of you to say." "Kind?" The man chuckled. "I am not being kind. I am being honest. Let me introduce myself. My name is Victor Chen, and I conduct the City Philharmonic Orchestra." A ripple of whispers went through the small crowd that had gathered. Even Lisa had heard of Victor Chen. He was famous, one of the most respected conductors in the country. She had watched videos of his performances online, never imagining she would ever meet him in person. I know who you are," Lisa managed to say. "I've seen your recordings. You're amazing." Victor waved his hand dismissively. "Tell me, where do you study? Who is your teacher? I must know because they are doing something very right." Lisa felt her stomach drop. This was the part she had been dreading. "I don't have a teacher," she admitted. "I teach myself. I watch videos online and practice on a keyboard at home." Victor's eyes widened. "You are self-taught? That is impossible." The technique you just displayed, the interpretation, the emotional maturity, these things cannot be learned from videos alone. I also read books from the library, Lisa added, trying to be helpful. And there's this elderly lady at the community center who used to teach piano. She lets me practice on the old upright they have there sometimes, when nobody else is using it. She gives me tips when she's around. Victor leaned more heavily on his cane, looking like he needed the support. Remarkable. Truly remarkable. He turned to the hotel manager. David, do you know this young woman? The manager, whose name was apparently David, looked embarrassed. Actually, her mother works here. She's one of our housekeepers. I believe the young lady was just waiting to meet her. Just waiting, Victor repeated, shaking his head. She was just waiting, and she gave us a gift. He turned back to Lisa. What is your name, dear? Lisa. Lisa, how old are you? 17. Victor looked at her for a long moment, and Lisa could see thoughts moving behind his eyes, plans forming. Do you know what a conservatory is? Yes, sir. It's a music school. A really good one. The city conservatory is one of the finest in the country, Victor said. Students come from all over the world hoping to be accepted. The application process is extremely competitive. Most students who apply have been training since they were small children with the best teachers money can buy. Lisa nodded, not sure where this was going, but feeling her heart start to beat faster. I sit on the board of directors for the conservatory, Victor continued. And I am telling you right now that you need to audition. I will personally sponsor your application. The words hung in the air. Lisa stared at him, certain she had misheard. I'm sorry, what? The conservatory, Victor repeated patiently. You must audition. With your talent, with proper training, you could become a professional musician, a concert pianist. But that talent needs to be nurtured, developed. You need real instruction, real opportunities to grow. Lisa felt tears pricking at her eyes again. Mr. Chen, I can't afford something like that. The conservatory, it probably costs. There are scholarships, Victor interrupted gently. Full scholarships for students with exceptional talent. And believe me, Lisa, you have exceptional talent. With my recommendation and the video evidence of your playing, he glanced at Catherine, who was still holding her phone. I assume you recorded that? Catherine nodded mutely, looking like she was in shock. Excellent. That video, combined with a formal audition, should be more than enough to secure you a full scholarship. The conservatory would be foolish not to accept you. Lisa couldn't speak. This was too much. Too impossible. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. She worked at a grocery store. She practiced on a broken keyboard. She was just trying to help her mother with the rent, not become some kind of concert pianist. I can see you are overwhelmed, Victor said kindly. That is understandable. Here. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, handing it to Lisa. This has my personal number. Call me tomorrow after you have had time to think. We will discuss the details then. Lisa took the card with trembling fingers. It was heavy cardstock, expensive, with Victor's name embossed in gold letters. She ran her thumb over the raised text, making sure it was real. There is one more thing, Victor said. He gestured around the lobby at the people still watching. This hotel hosts a chamber music series. Small concerts, very intimate. The next one is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. David, is that correct? The hotel manager nodded enthusiastically. Yes. 3 weeks exactly. I would like to add Lisa to that program, Victor announced. A solo piano performance. Nothing too long, perhaps 20 minutes. But it would give her experience performing for an audience, which will be essential for her audition. He looked at Lisa. Would you be willing to do that? Lisa felt dizzy. First a scholarship, now a concert? Yes, I would. But I only know a few pieces well enough to perform them. Then practice the ones you know, Victor said simply. Perfect them. Make them your own. That is all any performer can do. He smiled. And from what I just heard, you already know how to do that. Catherine suddenly stepped forward and everyone turned to look at her. Her face was flushed and she looked uncomfortable but also determined. Mr. Chen, I need to say something. Victor raised an eyebrow. Yes? Catherine looked at Lisa, and for a moment something genuine flickered across her face. Shame maybe, or regret. I was horrible to you. Before you played, I made assumptions based on stupid things that don't matter. Your clothes, where you work. I thought because I had expensive lessons and you didn't, that meant I was better. But I was wrong. She swallowed hard. You're a better pianist than I'll probably ever be. And I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air. Lisa could see how much it cost Catherine to say those words in front of everyone. Her friends were looking at her with surprise, clearly not used to seeing her admit she was wrong about anything. Thank you, Lisa said quietly. That means a lot. One of Catherine's friends, the girl with the elaborate braid, spoke up hesitantly. That was really beautiful. The way you played, I mean. I've been taking lessons for 10 years and I've never. I play the notes right, but it never sounds like that, like it meant something. Music should always mean something, Victor said firmly. Technical perfection without emotion is just noise. But emotion without technique cannot be properly expressed. This is why Lisa needs proper training. She has the emotion, the feeling, the natural talent. Now she needs the technical foundation to match it. He turned back to Lisa. I meant what I said. Call me tomorrow. We have much to discuss. In the meantime, go celebrate with your mother. Tell her what happened today. I suspect she will be very proud. As if on cue, Lisa heard her mother's voice calling her name. She turned to see her rushing across the lobby, still in her housekeeper uniform, looking worried. Lisa, I'm so sorry I'm late. I got held up on the 5th floor. There was a problem with one of the rooms and... She stopped, taking in the scene. The crowd, the piano. Victor Chen standing with his hand on Lisa's shoulder. What's going on? Lisa felt tears finally spill over, running down her cheeks. But she was smiling too, a huge smile that made her face ache. Mom, she said, her voice breaking. You're not going to believe what just happened. Her mother looked at her daughter's tear-stained face, at the crowd still gathered around, at the business card clutched in Lisa's hand. Honey, what did you do? I played the piano, Lisa said simply. And everything changed. 3 weeks had passed since that afternoon in the hotel lobby, and Lisa could barely believe how much her life had changed. She still worked at the grocery store, still lived in the same small apartment, still wore the same worn sneakers, but everything felt different now, like the whole world had shifted slightly and let in more light. The video Catherine recorded had gone viral. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed by millions of people. The comments section was filled with messages from around the world. People calling her inspiring. People saying her performance had made them cry. Music teachers sharing the video with their students as an example of what passion looked like. Lisa had read through hundreds of comments late at night, still not quite believing they were talking about her. Some people offered to send her money for lessons. Others wanted to donate pianos. A few music schools had even reached out, competing with the conservatory for her attention. It was overwhelming and wonderful and terrifying all at once. But tonight was what mattered most. Tonight was the chamber music concert at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. Lisa stood backstage, which was really just a curtained-off area near the lobby, and tried to calm her shaking hands. She could hear the murmur of the audience gathering on the other side of the curtain. The hotel had set up rows of chairs facing the piano, and every single seat was filled. They'd had to turn people away at the door. Her mother was out there somewhere, sitting in the front row. Victor Chen had insisted on it, had personally escorted her to the best seat in the house. Lisa had caught a glimpse of her mother's face earlier, so full of pride and joy that it made Lisa's chest hurt in the best way. Catherine was out there too. She had messaged Lisa a few days after the viral video, asking if they could talk. They'd met for coffee and it had been awkward at first. But Catherine had been genuine in her apology, explaining that she'd spent her whole life being told she was special, that her expensive lessons made her better than everyone else. Seeing Lisa play had shaken something loose in her, made her realize that real talent couldn't be bought. They weren't exactly friends yet, but they weren't enemies either. Catherine had even asked if she could attend the concert, and Lisa had said yes. It felt important somehow having her there, a reminder of how far she'd come in such a short time. David, the hotel manager, peeked through the curtain. 5 minutes, he whispered. The other performers are finishing up. You're on next. Lisa nodded, not trusting her voice. Her stomach was doing flips. What if she messed up? What if her fingers froze? What if everyone had been wrong about her talent, and she was about to prove it in front of hundreds of people? Hey, a gentle hand touched her shoulder. It was her mother, who must have slipped backstage. You're going to be amazing. You know that, right? What if I'm not? Lisa whispered. What if I can't do it? Her mother smiled, the same smile she'd given Lisa 1,000 times before. After long shifts at work, after paying bills that left almost nothing, after all the times life had been hard but they'd gotten through it together. Baby, you've already done the hard part. You learned to play with almost nothing. You practiced until your fingers hurt. You never gave up, even when it would have been easier to quit. This? She gestured toward the curtain. This is the easy part. This is just you sharing what you've already got inside. Lisa felt tears threatening again. She'd been crying a lot lately, but these were good tears. Grateful tears. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Now get out there and show them what my daughter can do. The applause for the previous performers faded, and Lisa heard Victor's voice over the sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, for our final performance of the evening, we have someone very special. 3 weeks ago, most of us had never heard her name. But after one incredible performance in this very lobby, the world discovered what I had the privilege of witnessing firsthand. Please welcome Lisa. The curtain pulled back and Lisa stepped into the light. The audience erupted in applause before she'd even reached the piano. She could see so many faces, all of them turned toward her, all of them waiting. There was her mother, tears already streaming down her face. There was Catherine, clapping with a genuine smile. There was Victor, nodding encouragingly from his seat near the front. But there were also faces she didn't recognize. Young people and old people, families and couples, people in expensive suits and people in regular clothes like hers. The video had brought them all here, but now they were waiting to see if she was real. If that moment in the lobby had been a fluke or the beginning of something bigger. Lisa sat at the piano bench, the same one she'd sat at 3 weeks ago. She adjusted her position, placed her hands on the keys, and took a deep breath. She had chosen to open with Clair de Lune again, the piece that had started everything. But she would also play 2 other pieces tonight, works by Chopin and Liszt that she'd been perfecting every spare moment she had. The audience grew quiet. The lobby was completely silent except for the soft sound of people breathing, waiting. Lisa began to play. From the very first note, she knew it was going to be okay. Better than okay. The piano responded to her touch like an old friend, and all the fear melted away. There was only the music, flowing through her fingers and filling the space around her. She played Clair de Lune with even more depth than before. Having lived with the piece for 3 more weeks, having played it dozens of times while imagining this moment, every phrase was shaped with care, every note placed exactly where it needed to be. When she finished, the applause was thunderous, but she barely heard it. She was already moving into the next piece. The Chopin Nocturne was tender and intimate, like a private conversation made public. Lisa poured everything into it. All the late nights and early mornings, all the worry and hope, all the love her mother had shown her over the years. She could feel the audience leaning forward, drawn into the emotional landscape she was creating. Then came the list, technically challenging and flashy, her fingers flying across the keys in passages that looked impossible, but felt natural to her now. This was the piece that showed what she could really do, the piece that demanded every bit of skill she'd developed. Her hands moved in complex patterns, the music building to peaks of intensity before pulling back to moments of delicate beauty. When she played the final chord, there was a split second of complete silence. Then the entire audience rose to their feet. The standing ovation seemed to last forever. People were cheering, crying, clapping until their hands hurt. Lisa stood and bowed, overwhelmed by the response. She looked for her mother and found her in the front row, openly sobbing with pride. Victor was applauding with his cane raised in salute. Even Catherine was on her feet, clapping hard and smiling through her own tears. Lisa bowed again, then gestured toward the piano in a gesture of thanks. The instrument had been her partner tonight, had helped her share the music that lived inside her. Without it, she was just a girl with dreams. With it, she could make those dreams real for everyone to hear. Backstage afterward, Lisa was surrounded by people. Victor was already talking about the conservatory audition, which was scheduled for the following week. The hotel manager was asking if she would consider playing regular concerts. Journalists were requesting interviews. It was all happening so fast. But the moment that mattered most came when the crowd finally cleared and it was just Lisa and her mother, standing together in the quiet. "I'm so proud of you," her mother said, pulling Lisa into a tight hug. "Your father would have been too. He always said you had magic in your fingers." Lisa had been too young to remember much about her father, who'd died when she was 5. But she knew he'd loved music, knew that her battered keyboard had once been his. Maybe that's where it had all started. Maybe he'd passed something down to her, some gift that had just been waiting for the right moment to emerge. What happens now? Her mother asked, pulling back to look at Lisa's face. Lisa thought about the conservatory, about the possibility of a future she'd never dared to imagine. She thought about all the hours of practice still ahead, all the challenges she would face, all the work it would take to turn raw talent into professional skill. But mostly she thought about the music itself, about how it had saved her in ways she was only beginning to understand, about how it had taken a girl who felt invisible and given her a voice that the whole world wanted to hear. Now, Lisa smiled, squeezing her mother's hand. Now I keep playing. I keep practicing. I keep learning. Because this isn't the end of anything, Mom. This is just the beginning. And somewhere in the lobby behind them, the beautiful Steinway piano sat waiting, ready for the next time Lisa would make it sing,